Hi everybody, Gisele Grenier here from artplace.ca. I'm going to do some playing in my adventure of creating all these artistic backgrounds. So today I'm going to work with watercolors. So I have a really large watercolor tray that I use to create my formal watercolors. But for when I go plein air painting, or I'm painting a live scene outside, or working on video here, but space is an issue. And same with when I'm hiking, is that, space is an issue in a backpack. So I have this little tray here, and I'm actually looking at getting something even smaller. Because I know a lot about and have authored many color theory videos, I can mix up whatever colors I need really with the primary colors and then add in white and black. Okay, but because color theory is not something that can be taught in 30 minutes, I have my limited set of limited colors here, which is even more than what you really need. But I thought I picked these because they're really good for getting a variety of bright colors. And these are sushi wheat watercolors. And what I have here is turquoise deep, and the pigment that's in here is PB15, which is phthalo blue, ultramarine blue, violet, brilliant cranberry, which is PV19, magenta deep, alizarin crimson, cad red light, orange, cad yellow medium, cad yellow pale, raw sienna, and burnt sienna. You may say, well, why don't you have white? Well, I do have an opaque white. I don't need it. I'm just working on some random backgrounds. There is no yellow ochre in this line, but I can take cad yellow medium with a little bit of raw sienna to create something like yellow ochre. I don't have a burnt umber because I can create a burnt umber with ultramarine blue, with 1 part of ultramarine blue, 2 parts of burnt sienna. There's indigo in here as well. I don't have it here because I want to save space, but I can create indigo, which is very similar to Payne's Gray, with 2 parts ultramarine blue and 1 part burnt sienna. So there's a lot of color mixing involved to create wide colors. And it's even worse when I'm only working with my primaries with white and black. So for this, I've got some, I've got some blues, I've got some violets, I've got some reds, oranges, yellows, and some earth tones. What I don't have here is green. Now, green is one of a pigment that I don't like. I don't like greens. I don't know why. I'm a landscape artist. I don't know why, but we can make up our own greens. But the purpose of this demonstration is to show you how to create some random backgrounds just from preparing a watercolor palette. And I started doing this because I was going to work on a watercolor, and then I went, oh, this is so cool. So I thought I'd film it. So what I did is I squeezed out a little bit of watercolor right from the tube, okay, into the palette. The beautiful thing about watercolors, a lot of my students, when they're taking watercolors with me for the first time, they go, why are these tubes so small? Watercolors are always in small tubes because there's virtually no waste. Because all you do, whether it's in a tube or a little pan, you add water to it to reconstitute it to make it usable. If it dries out, you just add more water, so there's no weight. Not like acrylics or oils. So I squeezed that a little bit in here, okay, and at the same time, this is where I started working on this. And when I pour a little bit of water in here, and then what I do is with the end of a brush, I just stir up the paint. I do not use the bristles because you're going into pigment in here. I use the end of the brush so it dissolves. Doesn't take long to do this, but you should, to try to get as much of the pigment blended in with the water, about 15 seconds. Then what I do, and this is where it's kind of cool, I take the brush, and there's pigment on the end of it, and I just kind of go onto a gessoed page. Now I'm holding this. I do this on the table just because I don't have much room. And I just go on and on and on until I don't have anything left. Now work on the next one. So let me just get these out of the way. Okay, and then I'll put this up here, and I'll put this here. Okay, so the next one, which is orange. All right, and this is really cool because it's random. It's totally random. There's no planning involved. Okay, sometimes it's really nice to be able to work on a piece of art that doesn't require any planning. Although I don't recommend it when we're working on color studies or painting studies or post shots. That sometimes you do require some planning, but this is just having some fun. Okay, and then I can just kind of just twisting my hand around. I'll turn my paper and I'll go someplace else. Totally random. And at the same time as I'm doing this, I'm kind of engraving a little bit into the paper, which is fine. Okay, I'll go into the next color. Now this next color, oh, that was Cad Red Light I just did. Now this is orange. And I believe, is it PO62? Is this Parano? PO43. Pigment Orange 43. Okay, you can see it picks up a little bit of the pigment. So I just want to just kind of go around. And because this is a gessoed page, it doesn't sink into the paper. I could have done this on watercolor paper, but I wanted it to sit in. I think you can still see right at the top of your screen there. This is Cad Yellow Medium. And I'm also doing something that I actually tell my students, especially the ones, like I teach online and face-to-face. And the face-to-face ones is the ones I can see. I am wearing lounging outfit with like pants and a shirt that I just kind of lounge around in. I didn't change it to my painting clothes, but my lounging outfit is bright pink. Ooh, see? Never ever wear bright colored clothing when you're working on at least color studies and formal paintings. The light in your room will reflect off your clothing onto your artwork. The actual best color to wear is gray. Neutral gray. Black will absorb all the light. White will reflect everything, so gray is actually pretty good. That's why my art table is gray. But if you're just having fun, I wouldn't worry about it. Okay? And we're with yellow. Yellow. Okay, well, I didn't get too much out of that one. And we'll put the next one. Chaos is laying down on the floor, upside down like a bunny rabbit on a spit. Oh, so I can't back up my chair. I'm a little uncomfortable right now. I can't even back up my chair. Okay, this is Cad Red Light. Now I have two sets of watercolors. I've got a very high-end professional set, which I use for my commissioned pieces. This set here, the Sushiwi ones, I really like these, although they're not a really, really high-end. They're amazing. They're full of pigment. I prefer using pure pigments where I can mix a lot of my colors, whereas the Sushiwi line, they have a lot of the pigments already mixed up for you, so you have less control, though it's more convenient. These are amazing for anybody learning watercolors, and especially kids, because the pigments are all non-toxic. But they are so full of pigment. They go a long way. This is raw sienna. I did an entire series of videos, watercolor backgrounds, using these. They are so vibrant, but I will add in other paints that have the pure pigments, because I prefer mixing from my set standard of pure pigments where I control the color mix. But because this is just having fun, you can use whatever you want. Okay, and burnt umber. Alright, so I've got that in there now. So what's next? Look at that. Isn't that kind of cool? Okay, and I've got some dry stuff here too. You can take the brush and, you know, kind of go through there. Now this is really cool. Now this can be a little bit messy, so I'm going to close this so I don't get more water around than I need to. Take a little misting bottle. You want to spray it enough. Now, one thing when you need to keep in mind is that when you're working with watercolors and you're spraying with water, all you're doing is really dissolving the watercolor. If you were to go and paint something on top of it, it will slightly dissolve what's on there already. If you want to fix it and still be able to kind of mush around with this, Spectrafix. Okay, Spectrafix is a milk Kessin formula, and because I'm in Canada, I get it in the concentrate format, and then I add alcohol to it. This is formula. There's an actual measurement recipe that you do this. Then you can use. I use this for pastel, charcoal, all that stuff. But it's great for watercolors because it sets it. What's really cool too is that now one of my other videos I've already done is I've done a watercolor background, and when you splatter, not spray, take this and splatter this onto watercolors, is that it blooms and creates some beautiful effects. So one thing to keep in mind, when you use just plain water, you're not fixing it. When you're using Spectrafix, it's going to fix, so when you paint on top of that, it'll be fine. So let's just see, and I'm just adding a little bit of water, but see what's happening? It just dissolves. Now when you're doing this, be careful not to use too many colors. I put the whole palette on here, but just to show you. But what happens is that if you're going into, again, this goes into color theory, if you're going into opposites on the color wheel, you'll get something that's usually a lot more toned down and darker. Okay, less intense. Right now everything's intense. But if you're going with colors like violets and reds, they're naturally next to each other in the color wheel. If they mix, they're fine. But if you go with a red and a green, or a blue and an orange, those types of things, then they're going to be neutralized. And you can kind of just go down like this. See, I took violet and went into the yellow, and it's kind of earthy. And I'm looking at this now, and you know what I could, this here would inspire me for? A road map. This is cool. I can bring that down to create some new paths. There we go. So that's that. Now, the other thing you can do, which is kind of cool, is that if you have a can of compressed air, you can use a straw, but my head would get right into the way, is you can take the compressed air and you can move it around. This is on gessoed multimedia paper. So the watercolor is not absorbing into the paper. Okay, because the gesso creates it's a sealer. Okay, so it's not absorbing into the paper. If you wanted to do this on actual watercolor paper, you can. That's fine. And it's a completely different look. What I'll do is I'll just do a couple more of these, and then I'll go get some watercolor paper to show you. Okay, I'll be right back. Okay, so I got myself a sheet of watercolor paper. Now, the paper that I'm using, let's see, it's cold press. It's really thin. It's only 90 pounds. I use this just to muck around with. Okay, I don't use this for formal paintings because it's way too thin. You have to actually stretch it and tape it down. So there's a rough side and a smooth side. You can use both. Watch, I'm just going to put this right on top. Let that sit for a little bit. And I don't know if you can see this. You can start seeing some of the watercolor being absorbed into the paper. And I'm doing this very slowly because you don't want to just go here and very quickly spread it out because it'll spurt out from all the edges. But see, now the paper's starting to curl. I really like, oops, a little bit, see, it's spreading out here, see? 140-pound watercolor paper is really, really good. Ooh, look at that. Isn't that awesome? Totally random. Totally random. Totally unique. Totally unique. Now, I'm going to take this gessoed page, do this a different way. I'm going to get another sheet of watercolor paper. On the rough side. Now I'm going to pour this. I love purple. Now, see, look what's happening. Totally random. Now, if I wanted, there's a big heavy blob of violet there. I can take some water. Just a bit more. Just move that around. I don't think the angle that I'm on is the best, but then I'll just kind of really get the water down there. Get as much of the pigment off as possible. Okay, then I'll put that aside. Another random one. Now, so this is on watercolor. Woo! This is why I prefer using thick stuff, but this is just plain. Okay, so I'm going to take my can of compressed air and watch. You just bloom it out. Always read the directions on your compressed air just to make sure that you're using it in the right fashion. You gotta be careful with this because I don't want to splatter it all over. Violet is really powerful, like deoxazine purple. Totally random. Look at that. Do you know what I see here? I see a chicken. I see a chicken. Do you not see a chicken? I do. Here's his beak. Actually, it's a chicken with a top hat. And his legs, scratchy legs. He doesn't have a nice tail, so we can give him a nice tail. And it's just about having fun, creating random things. Oh, that's neat. It's all about random. See, that's why with one pigment it's really nice. Now with this you can use a heat gun to dry it, which is what I'm going to do. Because then you can take, and you don't have to dry everywhere, but what I want to do, and I can talk over the gun, is that I'll dry it in just some certain areas. A hair blower is a little bit more difficult because of the airflow in the hair blower. It'll actually move the paint around. Right now, and I don't know if you can, let me get a really, really good close-up. Cameraman, close up. Now, watch this area right here. See how it's drying? I lift it up a little bit higher. See, watch. Now this area here, I'm going to leave that. Now if I take this heat gun, I can move it a little bit, but a hair blower will be way too much. Oops, oh, I got it on my table. I'm going to dry this. I like drying, excuse me, I like drying my edges because then the paint will have some, you know, it'll be further absorbed. Just going to dry the tall mounds here. I mean, you can let this dry naturally, that's fine, but I just want to show you what else we can do. And as the puddles dry out, then you get these beautiful edges. Now, I can do this with the compressed air, but if I do it by hand, now, whoopsie, oopsie. Okay, see that? Now, I'm going to tilt my paper. It's all about random. Because the paper is not wet, you're controlling where the watercolor goes. It's still random. It's still random. But when you're working with a wet page, the watercolor just goes and finds. It just kind of searches out and follows where it's wet. See, it keeps wanting to go here. So what do? I can kind of make a little thing here. And then, see, look at those lines. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some Spectra Fix, okay? Gently shake it, because I want to fix this. Okay. Now because this has alcohol in it, I don't recommend you take a heat gun to it. You may set everything on fire. Do it responsibly. I mean, check with, you know, the instructions on your anything that you're using in the studio, check the instructions to make sure that you're using it in the right way. I do use a heat gun on this, but I'm constantly watching my paper. So just watch this. Okay. Your watercolor paper, regardless of what you're using, will catch fire if you put the heat gun onto it, especially a heat gun because it's an actual element. This is almost like a very low voltage paint scraper. Like, you know, you use these guns on kitchen cabinets to scrape paint. So you get all these beautiful, let's get something happening here. Okay, I've got some nice contrast there. Okay, I'm just going to hold this up now. You can see it drying. I don't want to move the paint, so I'm going to hold the gun up a little bit higher. And I'm only doing this on now to save time, okay, because it's on camera. So just that way you can see exactly what happens when the watercolors dry. So if I get a really, really good close-up, cameraman. Okay, watch here. And you can see, here's one here, so watch this. Try to hold it up so it doesn't move the actual watercolor, but look what happens as it's drying. It gets absorbed into the paper, and as it's drying, you can see it's leaving some beautiful little edges there. And then you can do this as many times as you want, and then when it's totally dry, then I would give it another light misting of Spectrafix to actually set it, unless you want to basically go back over it and dissolve. Now, see how the paper's all kind of wonky? Okay, when it's 100% dry, when this is actually dry even to this point here, I'll actually hang this up with a little binder clip. Okay, hang it up where it's sideways, and I have a whole bunch of pages drying, and it's just a piece of string tied onto a shelf. Okay, nothing fancy. Once this is dry, I'll actually put it into a book press, which is another video that I have to do, just to press the paper, let it sit overnight, and it totally flattens it out. Okay, so that's just another really, really cool background. So I'll just take a little bit more Spectrafix. This fixative is non-toxic, and you can use it in the studio. I have, when I teach pastel classes and watercolor classes to kids, this is what I get them to use. Because you can also dip your brush in there, and you can create some really nice pieces. Okay, so I got that piece. I got this piece, which is kind of cool. I'll put that aside. And this is what whoopsie, so wet. This is what I started with, my Jesswood piece. Okay, very different look. Okay, and then from here, I mean, I can still do stuff to it, whatever I want. But so out of just cleaning, just from stirring up the paint in my watercolor palette and just cleaning the end of the brush right on my paper, I got 3 backgrounds that I can use to build additional artwork on top of. So there we go.